The criminal proceedings underway at Preston Crown Court carry severe implications for the British child protection system. Prosecutors have charged 36-year-old Jamie Varley and 31-year-old John McGowan-Fazakerley with the murder and sexual violation of 13-month-old Preston Davey. The clinical paradox of this case is that Preston was not hidden from the authorities. Because of acute risks in his biological family, Oldham Council mandated his emergency removal into state care when he was exactly 6 days old. He spent the next year safely reaching standard developmental milestones in the foster system. It was the rigorous state-sanctioned adoption process that eventually transferred him out of that protective environment and directly into the household of his prospective adopters. This table illustrates the brevity of that final placement. A court order authorised Preston's move to Blackpool on April 3, 2023. He was declared dead on July 27, 2023. The window between his arrival and his death measures exactly 115 days. A mortality window of fewer than 4 months within an approved adoption placement indicts the multi-agency infrastructure designed to protect vulnerable infants. The resulting legal action suggests a fatal systemic erosion in how the state evaluates domestic safety. Preston's welfare was legally tethered to multiple institutions. Oldham Council retained ultimate responsibility as his original corporate parent, while Blackpool Council operated as the host authority overseeing the physical placement. This table maps out the sheer volume of bureaucratic oversight attached to his short life. The roster of active statutory bodies range from the regional adoption agency handling the match to the local social services, right through to the emergency responders at Blackpool Victoria Hospital. Regional adoption agencies, or RAAs, were specifically engineered to streamline the matching process across different municipalities. In practice, centralising that assessment process often triggers a depersonalisation of the rigorous vetting required to evaluate a household. The density of this administrative web proves that the 115-day mortality window occurred despite constant statutory involvement. Administrative presence does not equate to child safety. This flowchart breaks down the UK adoption assessment pipeline. It operates in 2 distinct phases. Stage 1 handles statutory checks, physical health and personal references. If cleared, applicants move to Stage 2, which involves an intensive home study conducted by a qualified social worker. The critical filtering mechanism in Stage 1 is the DBS check. The entire vetting apparatus relies heavily on the disclosure and barring service to filter out known offenders before they ever reach the home study phase. Because Jamie Varley possessed no prior criminal convictions, he presented a perfectly clean record to the state. He easily bypassed the Stage 1 filters. The forensic digital evidence recovered by the prosecution reveals the vulnerability of that process. Investigators recovered extreme pornography from Varley's possession, an offence under Section 63 of the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act, with files dating back to 2017. 6 years of accumulated digital deviance bypassed the statutory filters. The 2023 assessment panels lacked any mechanism to detect behaviour that had not already resulted in an arrest. The current safeguarding recruitment ecosystem remains structurally blind to localised, non-networked digital deviance. Without a forensic digital review prior to placement, traditional background checks leave catastrophic vulnerabilities completely unexamined. Jamie Varley's professional standing provided a secondary layer of camouflage. As a head of year at South Shore Academy in Blackpool, he was entrusted with the safeguarding of hundreds of adolescents in years 9, 10 and 11. That role is governed by the stringent Keeping Children Safe in Education statutory guidance. Operating within this framework grants an educator an inherent presumption of extreme vetting and moral reliability. In this side-by-side comparison, we see how risk assessment methodologies break down. The standard Think Family model effectively probes biological families to identify localized risks like poverty or substance abuse. But when applied to a professional household, those same investigative tools are repelled by the subject's perceived social standing. Forensic psychologists label this phenomenon system grooming. An offender in a high-status role understands exactly the safeguarding language and behaviours that social workers expect to see, mirroring those traits to manipulate the professional network assessing them. This mirroring tactic consistently induces what practice reviews call disguised compliance and professional deference. Assessors treat the applicants as colleagues rather than subjects of investigation. The UK adoption framework harbours a fatal unconscious bias. By defaulting to a presumption of safety for professional peers, the system neutralises the objective professional curiosity required to protect a child. UK adoption law mandates that the period between initial placement and the final adoption order must involve intense continuous scrutiny. Social workers and health visitors are required to conduct frequent visits to ensure the child's safety. This map traces Preston's transition from Oldham's jurisdiction to a placement in Blackpool. That cross-border coordination inherently fragments local oversight, dividing the responsibility for monitoring the child's welfare across multiple distant administrative bodies. Despite the statutory mandate for intense scrutiny, digital metadata from the recovered devices indicates that systematic abuse occurred consistently from March through July 2023, entirely undetected by visiting professionals. The immediate onset of this digital capture contradicts a standard stress response narrative, where a caregiver breaks under the pressure of a new infant. The timeline points clearly to a calculated predatory opportunity, utilising the adoption apparatus as a vehicle for access. The 115-day monitoring vacuum culminated on the evening of July 27th. At approximately 7:15 p.m, Preston was brought to the Blackpool Victoria Hospital Emergency Department by his prospective adopters, completely unresponsive. The combination of geographic fragmentation and professional deference created a total oversight vacuum. It allowed systematic exploitation to occur continuously under the guise of an approved state-monitored transition. The Crown Prosecution Service authorised 33 specific charges against Jamie Varley. The inclusion of murder, assault, grievous bodily harm and distributing indecent photographs outlines a campaign of systematic torture and exploitation rather than singular negligence. Looking at the indictments, the strategy regarding John McGowan-Fazakerley centres on Section 5 for allowing a child's death. This enforces joint culpability, preventing adults from using a silence pact to escape liability when failing to protect a child. By utilising this specific legislation alongside joint charges of child cruelty, the CPS formally acknowledges that this adopted domestic environment was structured as a site of shared culpability. In response to these catastrophic oversight failures, the UK government's Stable Homes Built on Love initiative proposes structural reforms, demanding increased frequency and depth in multi-agency reviews. This updated flowchart reflects demands from safeguarding experts. The core proposal is enhanced digital vetting, requiring prospective adopters to submit hardware and online history for review. The sector is also pushing a strict probationary model of intrusive surveillance for the first 6 months of placement. The UK safeguarding state must rigorously restructure how it defines and investigates risk. The legal transfer of a child from foster care to adoption must be engineered as a heavily audited journey to safety, permanently immune to the blinding effect of the professional halo. Thank you for watching the Daily Bollocks. Like, comment and subscribe. See you next time.